Look at this ghetto trash trying to fly with the real people. Kyle Morrison snatches Diana Reeves' Louis Vuitton luggage and smashes it repeatedly against the concrete floor. The expensive case splits apart with each violent impact, leather and metal breaking under his fury. Top-secret terrorism intelligence documents scatter like leaves in a hurricane across O'Hare's tarmac. Diana drops to her knees, frantically gathering papers marked with government seals before other passengers can see them clearly. Kyle spits on the broken luggage, then livestreams himself laughing. The welfare queen thought she could fool me with fake designer bags. His TikTok audience climbs rapidly as passengers record with their phones. Diana's hands shake as she checks her watch. Her face goes pale, not from humiliation, but from something far more terrifying. What Kyle just destroyed will change everything. He has no idea what's coming. Have you ever witnessed someone make the worst mistake of their life without knowing it? Because Kyle Morrison just crossed a line he can never uncross. Chicago O'Hare operates under Code Orange security alert this Tuesday morning. The entire airport buzzes with heightened tension as Homeland Security teams conduct random sweeps throughout Terminal 3. Diana Reeves arrives precisely at 10:15 a.m., stepping out of a black government sedan that pulls away immediately. She carries both an armored briefcase handcuffed to her wrist and the Louis Vuitton luggage that will soon become the center of a national crisis. Her movements are purposeful, professional, someone accustomed to operating under pressure. At Gate B47, Flight 447 to Atlanta sits delayed for the third consecutive hour. Passengers grow increasingly frustrated, but none more dangerous than Kyle Morrison. 12 years with the airline have given him a sense of untouchable authority. His employee file, buried deep in corporate HR systems, contains 17 formal complaints about discriminatory behavior. Each time, union protection and management indifference allowed him to escape meaningful consequences. Kyle scrolls through his phone, responding to comments on his latest TikTok video, a rant about entitled passengers who think they're special. His social media presence reveals a disturbing pattern. Screenshots of his posts show coded language popular among white supremacist groups, shared conspiracy theories about government overreach, and barely concealed hatred toward minority communities. Radio chatter crackles across airport communications. All department heads to emergency briefing at 1800 hours, priority alpha classification. Diana approaches the gate counter, her federal ID briefly visible as she adjusts her jacket. The security checkpoint staff had recognized something important about her credentials, though Kyle remains oblivious to the significance. Her phone buzzes constantly with urgent calls from Washington. "Director, the vulnerability assessment cannot be delayed." Her assistant's voice carries through the phone. "Lives depend on this briefing reaching the right people." Kyle overhears fragments of the conversation. Director means nothing to him. Probably some middle management corporate position, he assumes. His contempt for authority runs deep, especially when that authority doesn't look like him. Another airport announcement echoes overhead. "Homeland Security sweep in progress. Report any suspicious activity immediately." Diana checks her watch again. The weight of her mission presses down heavily. Inside her luggage lies the backup copy of the most sensitive airport security assessment ever compiled, detailed vulnerability reports for 47 major airports across the Midwest. The original documents are already in Washington, but this backup represents months of classified intelligence gathering. Her phone rings again. This time, the caller ID shows a Washington, D.C. area code with government encryption markers. "Ma'am, the threat level just elevated to critical," the voice reports. "The security briefing moved up to 6 p.m. sharp. No delays possible." Kyle watches Diana with growing irritation. Her expensive clothes, professional demeanor, and constant phone calls trigger every prejudice he's carefully cultivated over the years. In his warped worldview, successful black women represent everything wrong with modern America, people getting ahead through what he believes are handouts rather than merit. The irony cuts deep. As Kyle plots his racist harassment of Diana, he has no idea she oversees the very regulations that allow his airline to operate. Her signature appears on the federal documents that could ground every plane in the company's fleet. Flight 447's delay stretches into its fourth hour. Kyle's supervisor calls in sick, leaving him as the senior gate agent. The authority goes straight to his head. Diana's final phone call before approaching Kyle's counter carries an ominous tone. Confirm the emergency session. Airport security protocols for the entire region depend on this intelligence reaching congressional leadership tonight. Kyle looks up from his phone as Diana approaches, already forming the words that will destroy his life forever. Diana approaches Kyle's counter with measured professionalism, her federal training evident in every controlled movement. She places her boarding pass down gently, maintaining the calm demeanor that has served her through countless high-stakes situations. "Excuse me, sir. I need to request expedited boarding due to a federal emergency timeline," Diana says, her voice steady but urgent. "My connecting flight cannot be missed." Kyle looks up from his phone with immediate disdain. The sight of Diana's expensive clothes and confident bearing triggers something primal in his prejudiced mind. He doesn't see a government official on urgent business. He sees what his twisted worldview has taught him to hate. "Federal emergency?" Kyle's voice drips with mockery as he stands up slowly, deliberately using his height to intimidate. "Lady, the only emergency here is your attitude problem." Several passengers near the gate look up from their devices, sensing tension building. Kyle notices their attention and feeds off it, his chest puffing with artificial authority. A young mother with 2 children moves her family further away from the counter, instinctively sensing danger. "Sir, I understand you're frustrated about the delays, but I have official government business that requires—" "Government business?" Kyle cuts her off with a harsh laugh. "Let me guess. You work for the welfare office? Maybe the food stamps department?" His voice carries far enough for dozens of passengers to hear every word. An elderly white man near the charging station nods approvingly at Kyle's words. A Hispanic businessman shakes his head in disgust. The gate area divides along invisible lines as passengers choose sides in the developing confrontation. Diana maintains her composure despite the public humiliation. "I need to reach Washington in 90 minutes for a national security briefing. If you could please—" "National security?" Kyle's racist explosion echoes through the gate area. "What are you, Obama's cousin, coming to complain about airport security?" He pulls out his phone, opening TikTok's live stream function. "Check out this welfare queen trying to boss me around." The red recording light starts blinking. Kyle's audience begins growing immediately. 12 viewers, then 50, then over 200 people watching in real time as disaster unfolds. "Everyone needs to see this," Kyle announces to his phone camera. "This is what entitled looks like, folks. A woman shows up with fake designer bags thinking she deserves special treatment." "Sir, please put the phone away and let's handle this professionally," Diana requests, her first hint of alarm creeping into her voice. Not because of the racism, she's endured far worse, but because of the mission timing. Every minute lost here pushes the briefing closer to impossible. "Professionally?" Kyle's voice rises to a shout. "I've been doing this job for 12 years. I think I know how to spot fake documents and entitled attitudes when I see them." A teenage girl pulls her mother's sleeve. "Mom, this doesn't seem right," she whispers. Her mother hushes her quickly, not wanting to get involved. Kyle steps around the counter, getting uncomfortably close to Diana. The power dynamic shifts as other passengers begin recording with their own phones, sensing something terrible about to happen. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see some real identification," Kyle demands, his voice carrying the false authority of someone drunk on minimal power. "Because this whole federal emergency story sounds like complete garbage to me. I've shown you my boarding pass and—" "A boarding pass anyone can fake," Kyle interrupts aggressively. "People like you think you can waltz in here with some sob story about government business and expect special treatment." A businessman in an expensive suit starts recording with his phone. "This is getting out of hand," he mutters to his companion. Diana checks her watch again, 87 minutes until the briefing that could prevent mass casualties. The weight of responsibility presses down on her shoulders like a physical force. "Sir, I'm requesting to speak with your supervisor immediately," Diana states firmly, her voice carrying undertones of authority that Kyle is too blinded by prejudice to recognize. Kyle's laugh turns cruel and theatrical for his growing online audience. "I am the supervisor here today, sweetheart, and I'm telling you that your little act isn't fooling anyone with half a brain." "Kyle, maybe you should call Janet," suggests Maria Santos, another gate agent who's been watching with increasing alarm. She recognizes the danger signs in his behavior. "Shut up, Maria," Kyle snaps without taking his eyes off Diana. "I don't need backup to handle one lying passenger." More passengers gather to watch. Some film openly, others pretend to read while listening intently. The gate area buzzes with nervous energy. "You know what I think?" Kyle continues, playing to his growing audience both online and in person. "I think you bought that fancy luggage at a thrift store and figured it would make you look important enough to get special treatment." An older black woman in the crowd shakes her head sadly. She's seen this before. Her granddaughter beside her looks ready to intervene, but Grandma holds her back with a firm grip. "Let me tell you something, lady." Kyle's voice drips with venom as his viewer count climbs past 800. "I see dozens of people like you every day trying to scam the system. Fake jewelry, fake designer bags, fake stories about important government jobs." Diana's jaw tightens. Professional training wars with personal dignity as she struggles to maintain composure under public assault. "Sir, you're making assumptions about me that are both inappropriate and..." "Inappropriate?" Kyle's racist rant continues, his voice getting louder as more people pull out phones to record. "What's inappropriate is you thinking you can fool a professional like me. I've been working in airport security since before you figured out how to properly dress yourself." The crowd of passengers grows larger. Some look visibly uncomfortable with Kyle's obvious racism, shifting nervously and avoiding eye contact. Others nod in agreement with his words, emboldened by his public display of prejudice. The division in the gate area becomes palpable. A young Muslim woman in a hijab whispers to her husband, "We should say something." He shakes his head fearfully, remembering their own encounters with airport discrimination. Kyle notices the crowd and feeds off their attention like a predator sensing weakness. His TikTok viewer count hits 1,200 as comments flood in, some cheering him on, others expressing outrage. "This is exactly what's wrong with America today," Kyle declares to his phone camera. "People thinking they deserve handouts and special treatment just because of who they are." Diana's hands clench into fists at her sides. She's endured racism throughout her career, but rarely so publicly vicious. Still, her training holds. The mission matters more than personal humiliation. Kyle's eyes lock onto Diana's luggage with predatory focus. Something about its quality offends him at a deep level. The craftsmanship, the obvious expense, the way it represents success he believes she doesn't deserve. "You know what? Let's see what's really in this fancy luggage." Kyle snarls, reaching for the handle with deliberate malice. "I bet it's full of nothing but cheap knockoffs and welfare paperwork." "Sir, please don't touch my personal property," Diana warns, her voice carrying new authority that cuts through the airport noise. For the first time, Kyle hears something that should give him pause, the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed at the highest levels. But Kyle's racism has poisoned his judgment completely. The warning only inflames his sense of power over her. "Personal property?" Kyle mocks as he grabs the luggage handle. "Lady, the only thing personal about this is how personally I'm going to embarrass you on social media." He hoists the expensive case above his head like a trophy, playing to both his live audience and the gathered crowd. His TikTok viewers surge past 1,500. "This is what happens when people like you try to fool hardworking Americans," Kyle shouts for his growing audience, sweat beading on his forehead from the exertion and adrenaline. Diana's composure finally cracks. "You don't understand what you're handling. Those documents contain classified..." "Documents?" Kyle interrupts with savage glee, walking toward the window overlooking the tarmac. "Lady, the only documents you have are probably food stamp applications and unpaid bills." Several passengers gasp as they realize Kyle intends to throw the luggage. A few call out for him to stop, but their voices are drowned in the chaos. "Time for a reality check," Kyle announces to his audience of nearly 2,000 viewers. "Let's see how this welfare queen's fake designer luggage handles the real world." With deliberate, calculated malice, he hurls Diana's luggage through the open gate window. The expensive case tumbles 30 feet onto the concrete tarmac below, exploding on impact with devastating force. The sound of splitting leather and breaking locks carries across the gate area like gunshots. Passenger gasps create a chorus of shock as classified documents scatter in the fierce airport winds like deadly confetti. Diana runs to the window, watching in absolute horror as papers marked top secret and classified blow across active taxiways. Months of intelligence work disappears into jet engine intakes and aircraft landing gear. Ground crew members scramble across the tarmac, trying desperately to collect scattered papers before they cause aircraft damage or compromise national security further. "You just destroyed classified national security intelligence," Diana shouts, her professional mask finally slipping completely as the magnitude of the disaster hits her. Kyle turns back to his phone camera, grinning triumphantly as his viewer count explodes past 2,300. "Yeah, right, and I'm the President of the United States. You hear that, folks? I just stopped a terrorist from boarding with fake government documents." In the distance, the unmistakable sound of FBI sirens grows louder, racing toward Terminal 3. The FBI sirens grow deafeningly loud as 3 black SUVs screech to a halt outside Terminal 3. Kyle continues live streaming, completely oblivious to the federal storm about to engulf him. "Did you see that, people?" Kyle grins at his phone camera, his viewer count hitting 2,500. "Just taught another scammer a lesson about trying to fool real Americans." Through the gate window, passengers watch in stunned silence as FBI agents in tactical gear sprint across the tarmac, collecting scattered documents with the urgency of a bomb disposal unit. Lead FBI agent Sarah Martinez bursts through the gate entrance, her weapon drawn but lowered. Her trained eyes immediately scan the chaos: broken luggage pieces, paper still blowing in the wind, and a crowd of passengers with phones recording everything. Kyle confidently approaches the FBI team, his chest puffed with misplaced pride. "Officers, perfect timing. I just stopped a terrorist from boarding with fake government documents. You should arrest this woman for threatening national security." Agent Martinez stops dead in her tracks. Her eyes lock onto several document fragments scattered near Kyle's feet. Even from a distance, she can see the distinctive red classified stamps and government seals that make her blood run cold. "Everyone step back immediately," Martinez shouts, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to life-or-death situations. "This is now a federal crime scene." Kyle's confident smile falters slightly. "Crime scene? Officer, I'm the one who caught the criminal. This woman was carrying fake—" "Sir, stop talking and step away from those documents," Martinez orders sharply, pulling out her radio. "We have a cosmic clearance document breach at O'Hare Terminal 3. Initiate lockdown protocols immediately." The words, "cosmic clearance," send shockwaves through the assembled passengers. Even those unfamiliar with government classifications understand that something catastrophic has just occurred. Kyle's TikTok audience swells to over 3,000 viewers as comments flood the screen, but the tone shifts dramatically as people begin recognizing the seriousness of the FBI response. "Wait, she's actually—" Kyle stammers, his confidence evaporating as reality begins penetrating his racist delusions. "This can't be real!" Diana steps forward, pulling out her federal credentials with shaking hands. The leather wallet bears the distinctive FBI seal and her official identification as Director Diana Reeves, FAA Counter-Terrorism Division. Agent Martinez examines the credentials, her face growing pale. "Ma'am, we have a potential code black intelligence compromise. How many people had access to these documents?" "Those papers contained vulnerability assessments for 47 major airports," Diana explains, her voice tight with controlled panic. "The briefing in Washington is now impossible. We've lost critical intelligence." Kyle's phone trembles in his hands as the magnitude of his actions crashes down on him. His live stream audience watches in real time as a racist airline employee realizes he's just committed what might be treason. I didn't know," Kyle whispers, his face draining of color. "She looked like— I thought she was—" "You thought she was what, sir?" Agent Martinez demands, while coordinating with additional FBI units flooding into the terminal. Airport CEO Robert Carter arrives in full panic mode, flanked by security personnel and corporate lawyers. His phone hasn't stopped ringing since the first FBI unit reported a national security breach at his facility. "Director Reeves," Carter approaches with visible terror, "I sincerely apologize for this catastrophic failure. How can we contain the damage?" The word "director" echoes through the gate area like a thunderclap. Passengers begin understanding that they've just witnessed something historically significant. Kyle backs away slowly, his TikTok stream still running as viewers comment in real time. This dude just destroyed classified documents. FBI is arresting him live. This is insane. Agent Martinez speaks rapidly into her radio. We need Homeland Security response teams at all 47 airports mentioned in the compromised documents. Treat this as an active terrorism vulnerability. Diana checks her watch one final time. 73 minutes until the briefing that could prevent coordinated attacks. The intelligence she was carrying represented months of investigation into specific threats targeting multiple airports simultaneously. Agent Martinez, Diana's voice carries the weight of imminent catastrophe. Those documents identified active security vulnerabilities that terrorists have been probing. Without that intelligence reaching congressional leadership tonight, we could be looking at the worst aviation disaster in American history. Kyle's legs give out. He collapses into a nearby chair, his phone still live-streaming his complete psychological breakdown to over 3,500 viewers worldwide. Homeland Security teams pour into the terminal as Agent Martinez coordinates the largest aviation security response since 9/11's. The scope of Kyle's racist action is becoming clear. He hasn't just destroyed luggage, he's potentially enabled mass murder. Sir, Agent Martinez approaches Kyle with handcuffs ready. You're under arrest for destruction of classified government property and potential terrorism-related charges. Kyle's TikTok stream ends abruptly as his phone is seized as evidence. His final broadcast showed 3,847 viewers watching a racist airline employee being arrested by the FBI for actions that could cost thousands of lives. The gate area empties rapidly as federal agents establish a secure perimeter. What began as a delayed flight has become ground zero for a national security crisis that will reshape aviation security forever. Diana stares out at the tarmac where pieces of her life's work still blow in the wind, knowing that Kyle Morrison's racism may have just handed terrorists the keys to American aviation. Agent Martinez establishes a secure command post as Homeland Security teams swarm Terminal 3. The entire gate area transforms into a federal crisis center within minutes, complete with encrypted communications equipment and counter-terrorism specialists. The victim is Director Diana Reeves, FAA Counter-Terrorism Division. Martinez briefs the arriving Homeland Security team. She oversees airport vulnerability assessments for the entire Midwest region. Kyle sits in FBI custody, handcuffed to a chair as the full scope of his catastrophic mistake becomes clear. His racist assumptions have collided with reality in the most devastating way possible. Director Reeves, Homeland Security Agent James Carter approaches with barely contained urgency. We need to understand exactly what intelligence was compromised. Diana takes a shaky breath, her professional composure strained to the breaking point. Those documents contained the results of a year-long investigation into coordinated terrorist reconnaissance at 47 major airports. We identified specific vulnerabilities that hostile actors have been systematically probing. The revelation hits the assembled federal agents like a physical blow. This isn't just document destruction. It's potentially the worst intelligence breach in aviation security history. Ma'am? Agent Carter's voice drops to a whisper. What was the timeline for addressing these vulnerabilities? Diana checks her watch with trembling hands. The congressional briefing was scheduled for tonight. We had credible intelligence suggesting coordinated attacks planned for this weekend. Without that presentation, she doesn't need to finish the sentence. Every agent in the room understands the implications. Kyle's voice breaks through the federal coordination. I didn't know. I thought she was just another welfare case trying to scam the system. Agent Martinez turns to face Kyle with barely controlled fury. Mr. Morrison, you didn't just commit a racist attack. You potentially enabled the largest terrorist operation since 9/11's. The blood drains from Kyle's face as the true consequences of his actions crystallize. His TikTok livestream, which ended when the FBI seized his phone, has already been downloaded and shared across social media platforms. Over 50,000 people have now watched Kyle Morrison destroy classified counter-terrorism intelligence. The live stream makes this exponentially worse, Agent Carter reports after checking his secure tablet. The video shows classified document fragments. We have to assume hostile actors have seen them. Diana's hands shake as she processes the cascading disaster. Those documents identified specific security gaps at Denver, Atlanta, Phoenix, and 24 other major hubs. If terrorists saw even fragments of that intelligence, Agent Martinez coordinates with Washington through encrypted channels. We need immediate threat elevation at all 47 airports. Full security protocols, no exceptions. Kyle begins hyperventilating as FBI agents explain his charges. Destruction of classified materials, potential terrorism facilitation, federal civil rights violations, and depending on outcomes, accessory to mass murder. I never meant for terrorists. Kyle sobs, his racist worldview crumbling under the weight of consequence. I just wanted to put her in her place. I didn't think she was actually... Actually what, Mr. Morrison? Agent Carter demands. Actually human? Actually important? Actually protecting the lives you just endangered? Homeland Security establishes direct communication with all 47 airports mentioned in the compromised documents. Emergency protocols activate nationwide as security teams search for signs of increased terrorist activity. Diana coordinates with her Washington office through secure satellite communication. We need to reconstruct the vulnerability assessment from backup sources. Every airport mentioned in those documents is now at elevated risk. The FBI technical team analyzes Kyle's social media presence in real time, discovering connections to white supremacist groups and conspiracy theorists. His online activity reveals a pattern of targeting government employees and military families. Mr. Morrison, Agent Martinez presents the evidence. You've shared airport employee access codes on extremist forums. This goes far beyond racism. You've been systematically compromising aviation security. Kyle's world collapses completely as he realizes his casual racism was actually domestic terrorism. His belief that he was protecting America has instead exposed it to unprecedented danger. Airport operations nationwide begin implementing emergency lockdown procedures. Diana's destroyed intelligence represented the most comprehensive terrorism threat assessment ever compiled, and its loss leaves American aviation blind to coordinated attack preparations. Director Reeves, Agent Carter reports gravely, early intelligence suggests terrorist cells have been unusually quiet this week. That silence now appears to be preparation for coordinated action. Diana stares at the scattered remains of her luggage on the tarmac below. Months of painstaking investigation, sources risked, and national security secrets gathered, all destroyed by one man's inability to see her as human. The weekend timeline gives us 48 hours maximum, Diana announces to the assembled federal team. If terrorists are planning coordinated attacks based on our compromised intelligence, they'll strike before we can close the vulnerabilities. Kyle Morrison, racist airline employee turned accidental terrorism facilitator, sits in federal custody as the largest aviation security crisis in American history unfolds around him. His live-stream destruction of classified documents has potentially enabled the exact catastrophe Diana spent years working to prevent. The gate area empties completely as the FBI establishes a secure perimeter. What Kyle thought was putting a welfare queen in her place has actually triggered a race against time to prevent mass casualties across American aviation. Outside, 47 airports implement emergency security protocols as federal agents work desperately to protect the vulnerabilities Kyle's racism just exposed to America's enemies. The FBI establishes a full counter-terrorism command center in Terminal 3's administrative offices. Banks of computers, secure communication equipment, and intelligence analysts transform the space into the nerve center of the largest aviation security crisis since 9/11. Director Diana Reeves coordinates with Washington through an encrypted video conference, her composed facade barely concealing the magnitude of the disaster. We need immediate threat assessment deployment at all 47 airports. Every vulnerability mentioned in those documents must be considered compromised. The secure video link connects her directly to FBI Director Michael Hayes in Washington, Homeland Security Secretary Janet Rodriguez, and a room full of the nation's top counter-terrorism officials. Director Reeves, FBI Director Hayes says grimly, we're treating this as a potential 9/11 level threat. What's your assessment of the intelligence compromise? Diana takes a steadying breath. Sir, those documents contain detailed vulnerability assessments that took 18 months to compile. We identified specific security gaps, personnel weaknesses, and infrastructure vulnerabilities across 47 major airports. If terrorists have access to even fragments of that intelligence, they could coordinate simultaneous attacks targeting our weakest points. Secretary Rodriguez finishes the thought that chills everyone in both rooms. Agent Martinez leads Kyle Morrison into a secure interrogation room, his racist confidence completely shattered. The man who hours earlier was live-streaming his humiliation of a black woman now faces potential terrorism charges that could result in life imprisonment. Mr. Morrison, FBI cybercrime specialist Agent Torres begins, laying out printed screenshots of Kyle's social media activity. We've analyzed your complete digital footprint. This goes far beyond today's incident. The evidence spreads across the metal table like an indictment of American extremism. Kyle's Facebook posts reveal shared conspiracy theories about government overreach, immigration fears, and racial resentment. His Twitter account shows interactions with known white supremacist accounts, including at Patriot Defender 1488 and at Real America First. His Instagram stories contain coded language popular among domestic terrorist groups, references to Day of Reckoning, Cleaning House, and patriotic resistance. I didn't think, Kyle stammers, staring at his own words reflected back at him. You didn't think so? Agent Torres presses. That sharing airport employee access codes on extremist forums was dangerous? That targeting government employees for harassment was illegal? Kyle's face goes ashen as agents reveal the full scope of his online activity. Screenshots show him sharing detailed information about airport security procedures on a forum called Patriots Against Tyranny. Posts include employee schedules, shift rotations, and vulnerable access points, all under the guise of complaining about government overreach and deep state infiltration. Here's your post from March 15th. Agent Torres reads from the evidence. Quote, another suspicious passenger today. Government ID, expensive clothes, acting entitled. These people think they own our airports. Posted pics of her boarding pass and ID partial. Patriots need to know who's really flying. End quote. Kyle's hands shake as he recognizes his own words. The forum moderators said it was patriotic to expose government agents traveling secretly. They said we were protecting America. Who were these moderators, Mr. Morrison? We need names, usernames, IP addresses. In the main command center, Diana works with intelligence analysts to reconstruct the compromised assessment from backup sources. The original investigation identified coordinated reconnaissance at Denver International, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta, Phoenix Sky Harbor, and 24 other major hubs. Our sources inside terrorist networks reported unusual interest in these specific facilities. Homeland Security Agent Carter coordinates with field offices nationwide through secure satellite links. Pattern analysis suggests terrorist cells have been systematically probing the exact vulnerabilities mentioned in Director Reeves's assessment. Denver reports unusual surveillance of cargo facilities. Atlanta documented suspicious individuals photographing security checkpoints. Phoenix identified attempted infiltration of baggage handling areas. The investigation reveals a shocking truth. Kyle Morrison wasn't just a racist airline employee. His pattern of targeting specific passengers reveals deliberate intelligence gathering for extremist networks operating both domestically and internationally. Agent Martinez, intelligence analyst Sarah Kim, presents her findings on a large digital display. Morrison specifically harassed passengers with government credentials, military IDs, federal contractor identification, and diplomatic status. Analysis of his incident reports shows targeting based on racial profiling combined with systematic intelligence collection. The data visualization shows Kyle's victims plotted over time. A disturbing pattern emerges. African American federal employees, Latino military personnel, Muslim diplomatic staff, and Asian American government contractors all faced harassment at precisely the times they carried sensitive materials or traveled on classified business. This wasn't random racism, Kim continues. Morrison was systematically identifying and compromising federal personnel at the exact moments they were most vulnerable to intelligence gathering. Back in interrogation, Kyle breaks under the weight of evidence. Video monitors show him dozens of other incidents across the past 2 years. Harassment that always seemed to escalate when passengers carried official documents or government materials. I thought I was being patriotic, Kyle sobs. Those people on the forum said government employees were traitors undermining real Americans. They said minorities were being promoted above qualified white workers through affirmative action and diversity programs. Which people, Mr. Morrison? Agent Torres demands. Give us names, websites, and communication channels. Kyle's cooperation reveals a network of domestic extremists who've been using airline employees to gather intelligence on aviation security. His social media contacts include baggage handlers at Miami International, TSA workers at Los Angeles LAX, gate agents at Boston Logan, and maintenance crews at San Francisco International. They told me to watch for suspicious passengers. Kyle continues, his racist ideology crumbling. They said people like her were probably terrorists or government spies trying to infiltrate airports for attacks. The irony cuts deep. Kyle's racist paranoia led him to attack the very person working to protect American aviation from the terrorists he thought he was fighting. FBI tactical teams simultaneously raid Kyle's apartment and the homes of 17 other airport employees identified through his social media network. The raids uncover a cache of evidence that transforms the investigation from individual racism to coordinated domestic terrorism. Director Reeves, Agent Martinez reports via secure channel from Kyle's apartment. Morrison's home contained printed materials from white supremacist organizations, detailed airport layouts he'd photographed with his employee access, communication records with known domestic terrorist sympathizers, and financial records showing payments from overseas accounts. Diana coordinates with international intelligence partners as the investigation expands globally. If domestic extremists have been systematically gathering aviation intelligence, we need to consider whether foreign terrorist organizations have been exploiting these networks. CIA Liaison Officer James Walsh joins the secure video conference from Langley. Director Reeves, we've identified financial transfers from accounts linked to international terrorist organizations to several individuals in Morrison's network. This appears to be a sophisticated foreign intelligence operation using domestic racism as cover. The interrogation intensifies as Kyle reveals the full extent of his extremist connections. Online forums had specifically instructed airline employees to target suspicious passengers for harassment and intelligence gathering, with particular emphasis on government employees traveling with official materials. They said if government agents were traveling secretly, we should expose them. Kyle admits, his voice breaking. They called it patriotic resistance to the deep state. They said minorities in government positions were security risks that needed to be identified and neutralized. Agent Torres presents Kyle with intercepted communications showing his handlers weren't American patriots, but foreign intelligence operatives. Mr. Morrison, those forums were operated by foreign intelligence services seeking to compromise American aviation security. You weren't fighting terrorists. You were helping them. Kyle's complete psychological breakdown accelerates as he realizes his racist beliefs made him a traitor to the country he thought he was protecting. The forums that fed his racial resentment were actually foreign psychological operations designed to turn American prejudice into a weapon against American security. Meanwhile, the broader investigation reveals systematic infiltration of airport security by extremist networks across multiple states. Kyle's case becomes the key to unraveling a conspiracy that spans international borders, dozens of employees, and represents the most sophisticated terrorist operation since 9/11. We're looking at coordinated domestic terrorism facilitated by foreign actors. Diana briefs the Joint Federal Task Force via secure video link. Kyle Morrison wasn't acting alone. He was part of a network specifically designed to compromise aviation security through racist ideology. The FBI technical team traces Kyle's online connections to extremist cells across the Midwest, Southeast, and West Coast. His live stream of destroying Diana's luggage has become a propaganda victory for terrorists who now know their infiltration strategy succeeded beyond their expectations. Director Reeves. Agent Carter presents the most chilling evidence on the command center's main display. Communications intercepts suggest terrorist organizations have been planning coordinated attacks specifically timed to exploit the vulnerabilities Morrison helped them identify. The weekend timeline isn't coincidental. Diana stares at the evidence wall, Photos, documents, communication records, financial transfers, and surveillance footage that paint a picture of the most sophisticated terrorist operation since 9/11, all facilitated by racism so deep that Kyle Morrison couldn't recognize the difference between patriotism and treason. "The weekend timeline means they planned to strike while I was traveling to brief Congress," Diana concludes. Morrison's attack on me wasn't random racism. It was the final phase of a coordinated operation to blind American intelligence at the critical moment. Kyle Morrison, the racist airline employee who thought he was humiliating a welfare recipient, has instead revealed himself as a key facilitator in a terrorist plot that could claim thousands of lives across American aviation. The investigation continues around the clock as federal agents race to prevent the coordinated attacks that Kyle's racism has enabled. Every airport, every vulnerability, every terrorist connection must be identified and neutralized before the weekend deadline approaches. Federal Judge Elizabeth Carter convenes an emergency tribunal as the largest aviation security crisis in American history reaches its climax. Kyle Morrison sits in orange detention clothing, his racist arrogance completely destroyed. "Mr. Morrison," Judge Carter's voice carries the weight of national security, "you stand accused of destruction of classified materials, facilitation of terrorism, and conspiracy against the United States. How do you plead?" Kyle can barely speak. "Your Honor, I didn't know. I thought I was protecting America." Assistant U.S. Attorney David Carter presents devastating evidence. "Your Honor, the defendant's actions weren't isolated racism. They were coordinated domestic terrorism that compromised national security at the highest levels." Video monitors display Kyle's TikTok livestream, now viewed by over 10 million people worldwide. The footage shows him destroying classified documents while spouting racist rhetoric, creating propaganda for terrorist recruitment. Diana Reeves takes the witness stand with unwavering authority. "Your Honor, the defendant destroyed intelligence that took 18 months to compile. Those documents identified vulnerabilities terrorists were systematically probing at 47 major airports." The courtroom falls silent as Diana explains the catastrophe's scope. "We had credible intelligence suggesting coordinated attacks planned for this weekend. Without that briefing, we face potential aviation disaster on an unprecedented scale." Kyle's extremist connections are revealed in devastating detail. Financial records show payments from overseas terrorist accounts. Communication intercepts prove foreign intelligence services weaponized his racist ideology. Morrison's network included airport employees at 37 facilities. FBI Director Hayes testifies via secure video. "This represents the most sophisticated infiltration of American aviation security in our nation's history." Kyle's airline faces catastrophic consequences. Midwest Airways loses its federal operating license permanently. CEO Richard Hayes faces federal charges for negligent hiring practices that allowed a domestic terrorist to access secure facilities for 12 years. The airline's stock collapses as investors realize liability extends to potential wrongful death claims. Insurance policies exclude terrorism-related losses, leaving the company facing bankruptcy and dissolution. "Mr. Morrison," Judge Carter addresses Kyle directly, "your racist attack went far beyond discrimination. You compromised classified intelligence, enabled foreign terrorist operations, and endangered millions of American lives." Kyle breaks down completely. "I never meant for terrorists. I thought she was just another welfare case. I didn't know she was protecting America." "Intent matters less than impact, Mr. Morrison," Judge Carter responds with finality. "Your racism made you the perfect weapon for America's enemies." Judge Carter announces the sentence. "You are hereby sentenced to 25 years in federal prison without parole, followed by lifetime supervision for terrorism-related offenses." Kyle's co-conspirators receive sentences ranging from 15 to 30 years as the domestic terrorism conspiracy unfolds through federal courts nationwide. The aviation industry implements comprehensive security reforms. New federal oversight prevents extremist infiltration. Employee screening includes mandatory bias training and continuous monitoring for radicalization indicators. International consequences follow as 127 countries adopt enhanced aviation security measures. Kyle Morrison's actions trigger global reforms, strengthening aviation security worldwide. Congressional legislation creates the Diana Reeves Aviation Security Act, mandating comprehensive background checks for all airport employees, including social media monitoring and psychological evaluations. Kyle Morrison's name becomes synonymous with how racism serves America's enemies, taught in federal law enforcement academies as the definitive example of domestic extremism. The racist gate agent who thought he was humiliating a black woman instead became the catalyst for the most significant aviation security transformation in American history. 2 years later, Director Diana Reeves stands before the United Nations Security Council in New York, delivering testimony that will reshape global aviation security forever. The packed assembly hall represents 193 nations united in preventing another Kyle Morrison incident. The Morrison case proved that individual racism can enable international terrorism. Diana addresses the global audience. What began as airport discrimination became a national security crisis that required worldwide response. Kyle Morrison serves his sentence in ADX Florence, the federal supermax prison reserved for the most dangerous terrorists. Completely isolated from extremist networks, he spends 23 hours daily in solitary confinement, his racist ideology unable to spread further poison. His former airline, Midwest Airways, exists only as a cautionary tale taught in business schools about corporate liability for employee extremism. The company's assets were liquidated to compensate victims of Morrison's terrorist network, though no amount of money could repair the damage to American aviation security. Diana's destroyed luggage became evidence in the largest terrorism prosecution in American history. The Louis Vuitton case, reconstructed by FBI forensics teams, now sits in the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History as a reminder of how prejudice threatens democracy. The aviation industry transformed completely following Morrison's arrest. 0 discrimination incidents have been reported across the entire U.S. aviation system since implementation of the Diana Reeves Aviation Security Act. Mandatory bias training, psychological evaluations, and continuous monitoring eliminated extremist infiltration of airport workforces. Maria Gonzalez, the former passenger who Morrison had harassed in 2023, now heads the Department of Homeland Security's Aviation Intelligence Division. Her first-hand experience with Morrison's pattern of targeting minority travelers provides crucial insight for identifying future threats. International cooperation reaches unprecedented levels as 127 countries adopt American aviation security reforms. The Morrison Protocol, named after the case that exposed global vulnerabilities, requires mandatory background checks and bias training for all airport employees worldwide. Educational programs ensure future generations understand the connection between racism and national security threats. Morrison's livestream, carefully edited to remove classified information, appears in high school civics curricula as a definitive example of how prejudice serves America's enemies. The FBI's Morrison Task Force continues investigating similar networks across other critical infrastructure sectors. Transportation hubs, power plants, and government facilities now screen employees for extremist connections that could compromise national security. Kyle Morrison's TikTok account remains permanently suspended, but archives of his racist content serve law enforcement training programs. Counter-terrorism analysts study his progression from casual prejudice to terrorism facilitation, identifying warning signs that prevent future infiltration. Diana's congressional briefing, ultimately delivered 3 days after Morrison's attack, led to the largest counter-terrorism operation since 9/11. Federal agents prevented coordinated attacks at 12 airports, saving thousands of lives and validating the intelligence Morrison nearly destroyed. Children in elementary schools learn about dignity and respect through age-appropriate versions of Diana's story. They understand that treating everyone fairly isn't just morally right. It protects their communities from those who exploit division and hatred. Morrison's extremist network faced justice systematically. 37 airport employees received federal sentences ranging from 10 to 30 years. Their cases established legal precedent that racism in critical infrastructure positions constitutes domestic terrorism. The passenger who filmed Morrison's attack, businessman Robert Carter, donated his viral video profits to establish the Diana Reeves Foundation for Aviation Security. The organization trains airport employees to recognize and report extremist behavior before it compromises safety. International aviation partnerships strengthen annually through conferences, training exchanges, and intelligence sharing protocols developed after Morrison's case. His attempt to divide Americans instead united the world against terrorism. Diana concludes her UN testimony with words that echo globally. Kyle Morrison's racism didn't just destroy my luggage, it nearly destroyed the security that protects millions of travelers worldwide. But from that darkness came light, proof that when good people stand together, hatred cannot win. The assembly erupts in sustained applause as delegates from every nation commit to implementing Morrison Protocol reforms in their countries. Could someone in your community be vulnerable to the same extremist manipulation that turned Kyle Morrison into a terrorist? How do we ensure that prejudice never again becomes a weapon against innocent people? Share this story if you believe dignity and security go hand in hand. Comment about times you've witnessed discrimination that could have been stopped. Subscribe for more stories about how ordinary people create extraordinary change when they choose justice over hatred. Like this video if you believe every passenger deserves safety and respect. Ring the notification bell to see how individual courage defeats organized hatred. Remember, every traveler deserves protection. Every worker has security responsibility. Every witness holds power to prevent tragedy. And sometimes standing up to racism means standing up for everyone's safety. Together, we ensure that Kyle Morrison's legacy isn't division, but the unity that emerged from confronting the hatred he represented.